Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a highly sensory journey straight into the past. We're going to be exploring the brilliant autobiographical memories of the legendary poet and philosopher Rabindranath Tagore. We're talking sweeping rivers, musical evenings, quirky stained glass castles, the whole shebang. But we're also going to look at the darker side of the story, how the sudden, aggressive encroachment of modern life threatened to sweep all of that profound peace away.
Right off the bat, we are hit with this powerful outburst of pure joy, the Ganges again. This was Tagore's immediate, visceral reaction upon returning from his second voyage to England. He headed straight to a riverside villa in Chandernagore to stay with his brother, Jyotirindra, and his sister-in-law. And man, you can just feel the relief, right? You can feel that deep emotional connection he has with the landscape. To him, this wasn't just a body of water. Returning to this river was literally a return to his own soul.
And that brings us to a question we really need to ask ourselves right now. Why do we crave a quiet sanctuary in an increasingly noisy world? It's a huge question because Tagore's desperate search for an escape from daily chaos is just as urgent for us today as it was for him over a century ago. So as we walk through his memories, I want you to actively think about your own life. What does your own personal riverside villa look like? Now, a really important bit of context here. Tagore didn't write these words in the fiery heat of his youth. He actually wrote My Reminiscence looking back at age 50. So what we're getting is this beautifully matured reflection, colored by time. He's meticulously reconstructing the sights, the sounds, and the absolute tranquility of his youth, while also capturing the very real tension between that natural sanctuary and the creeping industrialization of his present day.
Just listen to how he describes the absolute nourishment of this environment. He talks about a Bengal sky full of light, a gentle south breeze, and my absolute favorite phrase, he embraces what he calls a right royal laziness. Just this broad, uninterrupted leisure stretching from the green earth all the way up to the blue sky. He says these elements were literally like food and drink to the hungry and thirsty. He isn't just calling the river pretty, he's describing it as fundamentally nurturing, comparing it to the caring ministrations of a mother.
Well, as we all know, profound peace rarely lasts forever without a fight. Section 1. The Invasion of Modernity.
The conflict here was incredibly jarring. On one side, you have his past, these quiet little riverside nests clustering under the greenery, representing total peace and what he brilliantly terms a mental siesta. But then, practically overnight, those peaceful nests were violently replaced by these terrifying dragon-like mills. He describes them rearing their hissing heads everywhere, belching out black smoke. It was a complete sensory assault. The natural sanctuary was actively being chewed up by industrial machinery. Tagore even admits, trying to be fair, that maybe this industrialization is for the better overall, but he personally just couldn't see it as a purely good thing.
And because of those dragon-like mills, he lands on this incredibly powerful argument. In the midday glare of modern life, even our hours of mental siesta have been narrowed down to the lowest limit, and Hydra-headed unrest has invaded every department of life. Hydra-headed unrest. Think about how accurate that is. The moment you manage to cut off one modern stressor, two more pop up to take its place. He realized that our vital resting period, that absolutely crucial mental siesta, was being actively, systematically destroyed. So, to escape that Hydra-headed unrest for a bit, let's zoom back into the sensory sanctuary of his past. Section 2. Melodies on the Water. For Tagore, music and nature weren't separate things, they blended completely seamlessly. On rainy mid-afternoons, he'd get completely swept up, enthusiastically singing old Vaishnava songs to his own tunes on a harmonium. Then, later in the afternoon, they'd drift out in a boat, and his brother Jyotirindra would play the violin. They'd play classical ragas that were specifically meant to evoke certain times of day. They'd start in the late afternoon Puravi mode, and by the time they reached the evening Behaga mode, Tagore noted so poetically that the western sky closed the doors of its factory of golden toys and the moon finally rose over the trees. And as that moon rose, the music would naturally settle down. They'd row back to the villa's landing steps and just sit together on a quilt spread out on the terrace. He perfectly captures the mood here, saying a silvery peace rested on both land and water. The boats vanished, the tree lines melted into deep shadows, and the moonlight just glimmered over the smooth stream. It was a complete sanctuary of silence, the absolute perfect counterbalance to all the vibrant music from earlier in the day. All right, let's actually step off the water and go inside for a minute. Section 3. Secrets of Moran's Garden. The villa they lived in was known as Moran's Garden, and it was incredibly charming. Honestly, it sounds a bit like a magical maze.
You take this flight of stone-flagged steps straight up from the water to a long, broad veranda. And inside? The rooms weren't neatly arranged at all. They weren't even on the same level. You had to navigate these quirky, short flights of irregular stairs just to get around the house. But the absolute crown jewel of the whole place was this massive sitting room overlooking the river, which featured the most incredible stained glass windows.
These weren't just standard colored panes of glass either. They were intricate, vibrant pictures that completely captured his imagination. One window showed a swing hanging from a branch, half hidden in dense foliage, with a couple swinging back and forth in the checkered light and shade. Another showed a broad flight of steps leading up into this grand castle-like palace, with people in festive clothes coming and going. For a young, hyper-creative mind like Tagore's, these windows were basically portals to entirely different worlds.
Whenever the sunlight hit that glass, the pictures just glowed. Tagore wrote that they seemed to fill the whole riverside atmosphere with holiday music. He says, some faraway, long-forgotten revelry seemed to be expressing itself in silent words of light. Think about how gorgeous that is. The eternal story of that swinging couple brought the surrounding woodlands vividly to life. It was like the house itself was actively writing poetry for him.
Which brings us to the ultimate physical and mental pinnacle of his sanctuary. Section 4, the Tower of Poetry.
High above all those irregular stairs and glowing stained glass was the topmost room of the house, tucked away right inside a round tower. It had windows opening to every single side, and when you were up there, the noise of the world below just vanished. Literally, all you could see were the tops of the surrounding trees and the vast open sky. He took this exact space and dedicated it purely to his craft. This was his writing haven, the exact spot where he was busy composing his famous evening songs.
The level of devotion he had for this little room is just incredible. He wrote, "There, where in the breast of limitless space, clouds are laid to sleep, I have built my house for thee, O poetry." He actively, intentionally constructed a fortress against the noise of the outside world. Up in that round tower, elevated into the limitless space of the sky, he carved out the ultimate mental siesta he needed for his absolute genius to flourish.
So, before we wrap up, let's take a quick look at the monumental figure who actually built this sanctuary of words. Section 5, the man behind the memories.
Just to put this all into perspective, Rabindranath Tagore was born in 1861, and he grew up to become a massively influential Bengali poet, philosopher, artist, and educator. He wrote these beautiful reminiscences we've been talking about in 1911, right around his 50th birthday. Then, shortly after that, in 1912, he traveled to Europe and America for his failing health, and it was actually on that specific trip that he wrote for publication in English for the very first time, creating his legendary work, Gitanjali. This incredibly profound, river-nourished mind went on to win the Nobel Prize, firmly cementing his legacy worldwide until his death in 1941. So, as we conclude this explainer, I really want to bring all this back to you. We've explored Tagore's Round Tower, we've felt his silvery peace out on the river. So, where is your sanctuary from the hydra-headed unrest of modern life? How do you protect your own mental siesta from the dragon-like mills of our crazy fast-paced era? It's a massive challenge, one that Tagore laid out over 100 years ago. But honestly, figuring out that answer might just be the absolute key to sparking your own limitless creativity today. Keep searching for your sanctuary.